Hello, and thank you for viewing this training on the background and use of the Direct Behavior Rating Classroom Management. The DBR CM uses the DBR and General Outcomes Measures assessment methodologies to classroom management, or the behavioral tendencies that teachers utilize to conduct daily instructional activities. Classroom management is an umbrella term covering educator efforts to oversee the activities of the classroom collectively. Effective classroom management has emerged a highly influential factor influencing effectiveness of universal Tier 1 academic and behavior supports. The empirical link between student outcomes and classroom management is now well established. The DBR-CM was designed to be an efficient, flexible, and dependable assessment of educator delivery of universal Tier 1 services. There are three forms of the DBR-CM, including an external rater form, self-report form, and student rater form. This training is designed to prepare users to complete the external rater and self-report forms. This training will cover the DBR-CM background and rationale for development, development and domains, domain exemplars, single domain practice, and DBR-CM practice activities. Universal Tier 1 supports and services may best be described as the instructional, behavioral, and social-emotional supports provided to all students in an educational setting. The goal of such supports is to allow the majority of students, which is typically 80 to 90%, to function at an acceptable level in a given area. While essential for schools and districts to adopt universal Tier 1 practices and programs that are evidence-based, implementation factors are equally important to promoting student success. One, if not the primary factor, in underlying the effectiveness of such supports is classroom management. Classroom management is best conceptualized as the collection of behaviors that teachers utilize to oversee activities in classrooms. This perspective reflects a perspective that is consistent with the variety of behaviors educators use to organize, manage, and deliver the varied service and supports educators are now responsible for delivering. Evidence-based classroom and behavior management practices have been consistently associated with better student academic, behavioral, social, and emotional outcomes. Students in well-managed classrooms spend more time engaged in academic tasks, progress at a more rapid pace, demonstrate higher levels of academic achievement, are more socially competent, and display fewer disruptive behaviors. Despite the fundamental role it plays developing, shaping, and affecting change in student outcomes, classroom management has received significantly less scholarly attention when compared to attention targeting school prevention and intervention planning for student behavior. This is at least partially attributable to the limited number of assessment tools targeting teacher behavior in classrooms. Assessment plays an important role in service delivery, research cycle, database decision-making, and intervention development and validation, all of which have assumed more prominent roles in education in recent years. First, assessment serves to illuminate problems. Identification of problems drives intervention development and validation. The validation process is also highly dependent on assessment tools. Later, when interventions are implemented, assessment supports database decision-making. Assessment data is critical to objectively identifying intervention effects. Like assessments targeting student behavior, educator classroom management behavior has taken three forms: student outcomes, systematic direct observation, and rating scales. When selecting an assessment tool or methodology, it is important for users to consider the strengths and limitations of each assessment methodology or tool relative to its intended use. Despite increased work in the area of classroom management, the availability of reliable, valid, and usable tools allowing for the collection of data to support the presence or absence of effective classroom management practices remains limited. To address this limitation, the DBR-CM was developed. Currently, there are three forms of the DBR-CM: the external rater, self-report, and student rater forms. The external rater form is presented here. To date, examination of reliability and validity for the external rater form has been positive. Inter-rater reliability appears high for this form of the DBR CM. Several significant correlations between the DBR CM ER and concurrent measures of classroom management have been found in early explorations of the technical adequacy of this assessment. The DBR CM applies the same assessment methodology utilized by direct behavior rating single item scales to the assessment of educator classroom management behavior. DBR as a class of assessments combines the strengths of rating scales and the convenience and flexibility of general outcomes measures assessment methodologies. There is now an abundance of evidence supporting the use of DBR SIS to assess student behavior in classrooms in a flexible, efficient, usable, and defensible manner. DBRs are quick and simple to complete. Consistent with general outcomes measure assessment methodology, DBRs can be repeated frequently. After several years of empirical examination, the reliability and validity of DBR SIS is well established. Finally, DBRs allow for the collection of data that can be used across a variety of applications. DBR SIS uses a 0 to 10 scale to rate student behavior observed in classroom and other educational settings. DBR SIS uses a general outcomes measure approach that groups discrete behaviors identified through theory, research, and direct observation and linked to positive outcomes into broad constructs or domains. For example, a variety of individual student behaviors are captured by the domain labeled disruptive, including out of seat, playing with objects, calling out, sleeping, etc. Similarly, there are a variety of behaviors that are consistent with students being academically engaged. Several individual behaviors include eyes on the teacher, completing independent work, and responding to questions, which are all related to a student's ability to engage in academic instructional activities. Each individual behavior could be assessed independently, but doing so would be cumbersome. A DBR assessment lets users rate a student's academic engagement behaviors collectively with the understanding that ratings will depend on the presence or absence of any or all of the independent behaviors that constitute being academically engaged. This same logic applies to respectful and disruptive behavior. These broad behavior domains work in conjunction with one another to promote student success. DBR SIS groups discrete student behaviors associated with positive outcomes into 3 broad domains. As problematic behavior arises within these domains, the likelihood of a student being successful in the classroom overall decreases. This graphic presents the conceptual model used to guide the development of the DBR CM. A review of scholarly work in this area suggests classroom management is comprised of management of instructional content, promoting and responding to appropriate behavior, and responding to inappropriate behavior. The numerous discrete behaviors used across these areas were then grouped based on commonality into 4 categories: praise, communication, enthusiasm, and rapport. These behaviors collectively represent the overarching concept of classroom management. As classroom management behaviors increase, the higher the likelihood that more students will be engaged, exhibit more pro-social behavior, achieve at higher rates or levels, and experience less emotional or psychological stress. This relates directly to effective universal Tier 1 supports and services, which allows for more students to be successful and for more efficient and effective use of services and supports delivered at Tiers 2 and 3. This graphic presents a simplified version of the rationale underlying the DBR CM assessment approach. The behaviors making up the praise, communication, enthusiasm, and rapport work collectively and constitute classroom management as an overall concept. Now that we've covered the background and development of the DBR CM, we will move on to completing the DBR CM. As with the DBR SIS, this process is relatively simple and quick. please turn to your sample DBR CM form provided in your training materials. First, you begin by completing the top portion of the DBR CM's front page by filling in all available observation identification information. This information includes the names of the educator being observed and the observer, date and time of the observation, etc. Next, you quickly assess the layout of the classroom and rate whether or not this layout is acceptable. The third step is to watch the educator that is being rated. After the observation is completed, the observer rates the educator's behavior across the 4 broad DBR-CM behavior domains. Finally, DBR-CM data should be organized into a usable form. Before we discuss completing ratings for the broad behavior domains, we would like to briefly discuss the assessment of classroom structure. The purpose of this aspect of the DBR-CM is to consider how the arrangement of classroom materials, tables, desks, technology, etc. could impact an educator's ability to engage in successful classroom management behavior. For example, arranging desks or tables in a manner that makes it difficult for a teacher to access or see students easily could impact classroom management negatively. When completing this portion of the DBR-CM, quickly scan the room and look for arrangement of materials, desks, bookcases, etc. that might impact an educator's ability to access students or manage activity in the classroom. Moving on now to completing ratings for the individual behavior domains. Completion of DBR assessments requires the development of an internal anchor system. This approach asks users to select a starting point, or anchor, relative to the operational definitions provided for a given domain. The rater then adjusts their final rating based on the presence or absence of behaviors consistent with the operational definition. On our 0 to 10 scale, one could begin with an anchor of 0, which would represent a subject displaying none of the operational definition. As the observer reflects on the behaviors observed during the observation, the rater would move his or her rating up and away from 0. The closer the behaviors observed appear to the operational definition, the higher the rating would be. If the behaviors observed matched the operational definition perfectly, the rater would assign a rating of 10. The opposite anchor system could also be used. This is to say, a rater could begin with a score of 10 based on the operational definition and adjust downward as behavior incongruent with that operational definition is observed. Either approach is acceptable. We only recommend that once you select your anchor system, you retain it throughout an assessment cycle for an individual or project. In order to develop your anchor system, you must familiarize yourself with the operational definitions of the broad behavior domains making up the DBR-CM. Our first domain is praise. Praise is the use of positive statements or actions, including distribution of tangible reinforcers, in response to the behavior and performance of students in the classroom. In the classroom, praise looks like teacher uses more behavior-specific praise than general praise, uses praise contingent on expected behavior, provides 3 or more praise statements for every reprimand, reprimands are few and when used are not harsh, teacher is more positive than negative in their attitude when interacting with students, provides praise at desirable rates using nonverbal interactions, such as gestures, tangibles, or physical contact, and maintains an overall tone that is positive and not negative or sarcastic. This video presents an exemplar of praise.
Come get a test and go find a spot to work.
Can you watch it anyway? When you work right now?
Not under the table. Why do you sit there? Thank you so much, those of you that are working independently. I love how quickly and quietly appreciate it. Thank you very much. No? Tanner.
Should I write it in American form too?
Sure. Yeah. All right, why don't you guys scoot over this way so that we can talk quietly so we don't mess anyone up. All right, turn the whiteboard. We're going to start on the multiple choice side. All right, so everybody look at your papers right now. Make sure your name's on it. Make sure your name's on it right now, and if it's not, put it on there. And after your name's on it, make sure your number's on it, and if it's not, put it on there. And, yes?
Is there a multiplication sign?
That's X times. And thirdly, and go ahead and give the class a tally because I am very impressed at how quickly, quietly, and diligently you all went back, got to work, and are all exactly doing what you're supposed to do.
The next behavior domain assessed by the DBR CM is communication. Communication refers to the clear communication of goals and expectations of an instructional period. In the classroom, communication looks like: teacher provides clear academic and behavioral expectations to the students, explicitly states or posts instructional objectives and offers opportunity for clarifying questions, clearly presents behavioral expectations verbally and/or visually, uses an attention signal to gain attention of all students, and utilizes transition procedures that appear to be known and followed by a majority of students, as evidenced by efficient classroom transitions. This video presents a good example of communication.
Okay, so tomorrow is your math test. So today, we're doing our math review. So instead of having you guys get all the books, since we typically don't have enough books, I made a copy of it, so it's front and back with the 2 pages. So it's the exact same thing that you typically see in your math book, it's just on a piece of paper, so it'll be easier. So what I want you to do, hold your question for 1 second. Let me finish explaining because I might answer your question, okay? So what is going to happen is you're going to get it. You're going to do any work that you have in your math notebook, because since you'll be looking in your math notebook for your previous notes to help you remember how to do anything, I want you just to do your work on there. Just write your answer on here so when I collect this and check it, I can see what your answer is, and then if it's incorrect and you and I need to have a conversation, it's no problem for you to go get your math notebook and I'll still look to see what you did. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thumbs up if that makes sense.
The next behavior domain assessed by the DBR CM is enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is the delivery of instructional content in a meaningful, memorable, and/or engaging manner. Students are provided and respond to questions posed to the group and individual students frequently. Instructional material is presented using multiple modalities and is often linked to a practical real-world example or activity. The pace and tone of instruction is upbeat and engaging. In the classroom, enthusiasm looks like: the teacher provides 4 or more opportunities for students to respond per minute during instruction, and teacher asks many different students in the classroom at least 1 question during instruction. Teacher's tone and pace of instruction are positive and upbeat. Instructional content is supplemented with or related to a familiar life application, topic, or activity, and instruction incorporates alternative activities. For example, students as teachers, group work, pair and share, current event, etc. This video presents a good example of enthusiasm.
With this book is called Literacy by Design. Does this look like it's going to be a nonfiction book?
Yes.
Yeah, because what type of a book is this? Do you know? It's a specific word. Schools use them a lot. What type of book is this, Juliet? It starts with a T.
I know what it is.
Do you want to call on a friend to help you? Okay.
Textbook. Okay, Sarah. I'll walk through the last one. You're gonna
Lewis, who would you like this to be from? Okay. You would like to join your group?
The final behavior domain assessed by the DBR CM is rapport. Rapport is the quality of the student-teacher relationship, especially that of mutual trust, emotional affinity, acceptance, and positivity. In the classroom, rapport looks like the general feel in the classroom is mutually warm and accepting. The teacher uses children's names frequently. Interactions between the teacher and students are visibly positive. Students appear to feel comfortable approaching the teacher or asking questions. And teacher appears to feel comfortable, positive, and genuine in his or her interactions with students. This video presents an exemplar for rapport.
Aiden, they've got it. Thank you. Okay, so what you're going to do today is a non-fiction scavenger hunt. So the directions say, please use the Literacy by Design book and locate the following items. What does it mean to locate the following items? What does that mean, Tyler?
Find.
To find the following items. Answer the question that goes along with what non-fiction feature you found. So Sophie, will you go ahead and read question number 1 to me? Nice and loud.
Use the table of contents and write down the title of theme.
What?
Use the table of contents and write down what the title of theme.
Yeah, so we're going to use the table of contents and write down what the theme of, or what the title of theme 5 is. Somebody raise your hand and tell me, where do I find the table of contents? Where do I find the table of contents? Anna, where do I find it?
In the beginning.
In the beginning. Thumbs up if you agree, thumbs down if you disagree.
I wouldn't know that.
Where do you think it is then, Alex, if you disagree?
I don't know.
So where is it?
Now that you've seen some examples of each of the DBR CM behavior domains, we will practice completing ratings. For each practice rating, you will view a video and then rate the behavior observed using the DBR CM. Initially, you will practice rating individual behavior domains. Your practice will end with a longer observation period for which you will rate all the domains on the DBR CM together. Before we begin, make sure you have a blank DBR CM form. Remember, praise is using positive statements or actions in response to the behavior and performance of students in the classroom. This video will display behavior in the praise domain.
What would we be able to figure out from this glossary? Okay, that's all right. Haley? Adapt. Right. So, if we didn't know what adapt meant, could we use the glossary to help us figure out what adapt means? What does adapt mean? Joshua, thank you for raising your hand.
Change in order to survive in new environments.
Good. You may get yourself an Eagle ticket, Josh, for raising your hand and not shouting out. I appreciate that because I know earlier today we talked about that and I like that you made that change. Okay, so it would help us figure out what adapt means.
Come on. Press the bottom. Last time we pressed the bottom.
Okay, so again, same thing, but it would help us learn what adapt means and that would help us with adaptation.
Now think about what you saw, think about the operational definition, and complete your ratings. Hopefully, you rated the behavior you observed an 8. Ratings are considered reliable when they are plus or minus 1 of another rating. If you gave the behavior you observed a rating of 7 or 9, your rating is reliable. Additionally, years of research conducted using DBRs suggest ratings typically fall in ranges 0 to 2, 3 to 7, and 8 to 10. This may also be a beneficial way to think about the reliability of your ratings. If your ratings varied significantly from this rating of 8, please reconsider the operational definition and what you observed to determine if you were too harsh or too kind in your evaluation of the behavior you observed. Now we will practice with communication. Remember, communication is the clear communication of goals and expectations of an instructional period. This video will display behavior in the communication domain.
Okay, so tomorrow is your math test. So today we're doing our math review. So instead of having you guys get all the books, since we typically don't have enough books, I made a copy of it, so it's front and back with the 2 pages. So it's the exact same thing that you typically see in your math book, it's just on a piece of paper, so it'll be easier. So what I want you to do, hold your question for 1 second. Let me finish explaining because I might answer your question, okay? So what is going to happen is you're going to get it. You're going to do any work that you have in your math notebook, because since you'll be looking in your math notebook for your previous notes to help you remember how to do anything, I want you just to do your work on there. Just try your answer on here, so when I collect this and check it, I can see what your answer is, and then if it's incorrect, and you and I need to have a conversation, it's no problem for you to go get your math notebook and us to look to see what you did. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thumbs up if that makes sense.
Now, think about what you saw, think about the operational definition, and complete your ratings. Hopefully, you rated the behavior you observed an 8. Ratings are considered reliable when they are plus or minus 1 of another rating. If you gave the behavior you observed a rating of 7 or 9, your rating is reliable. If your ratings varied significantly from this rating of 8, please reconsider the operational definition and what you observed to determine if you were too harsh or too kind in your evaluation of the behavior you observed. Let's practice with enthusiasm. Remember, enthusiasm is the delivery of instructional content in a meaningful, memorable, and/or engaging manner. This video will display behavior in the enthusiasm domain.
Yes, the dance. Yes. Do the dance. Yes, the dance. We should do the dance.
No. I like the dance. Let's do it.
Yes. I want to hear the words, because the words are the important part. Actions will just wake us up. Simplify. Put your hands up in the sky. Distribute and do. Simplify. Put your hands up in the sky. This divine like turn and do the squirm. Add and subtract as terms alone on one side. Take a step back and do a slide. Divide, divide, and we'll learn. Jump to the left and do a turn. Now check.
Now, think about what you saw, think about the operational definition, and complete your ratings. Hopefully, you rated the behavior you observed a 9. Ratings are considered reliable when they are plus or minus 1 of another rating. If you gave the behavior you observed a rating of 8 or 10, your rating is reliable. If your ratings varied significantly from this rating of 9, please reconsider the operational definition and what you observed to determine if you were too harsh or too kind in your evaluation of the behavior you observed. Now let's practice with rapport. Remember, rapport is the quality of the student-teacher relationship, especially that of mutual trust, emotional affinity, acceptance, and positivity. This video will display behavior in the rapport domain.
Hey, let's all give a round of applause to Ian for participating.
And you were trying to get someone else to participate.
Yeah.
It was funny. And you're not upset it wasn't a partner?
Well, you know, all dance when I'm president.
Oh my god. Okay.
Now, think about what you saw, think about the operational definition, and complete your rating. Hopefully, you rated the behavior you observed a 10. Ratings are considered reliable when they are plus or minus 1 of another rating. If you gave the behavior you observed a rating of 9 or 10, your rating is reliable. If your ratings varied significantly from this rating of 10, please reconsider the operational definition and what you observed to determine if you were too harsh or too kind in your evaluation of the behavior you observed. Now let's practice with all 4 domains. Before we begin, make sure you have a blank DBR CM form. When watching the video, remember the operational definition for each construct. Praise refers to the use of positive statements or actions in response to the behavior and performance of students in the classroom. Communication refers to the clear communication of goals and expectations of an instructional period. Enthusiasm is the delivery of instructional content in a meaningful, memorable, and/or engaging manner. And rapport is the quality of the student-teacher relationship, especially that of mutual trust, emotional affinity, acceptance, and positivity. Now we will watch the video to assess behavior in all 4 domains.
You can hear me clap once. You can hear me clap twice. You can hear me clap 3 times. Okay, I need all eyes on me. Freeze what you're doing.
I don't like this game anymore. I don't like this.
Alright, I need you to stop what you are doing. When we are finished with this activity, you will be able to go back doing what you were doing now, so you don't have to clean anything up. Just leave everything where it is. What you have pulled up can be pulled up. I need everybody to come meet me on the brown carpet by the time I get to 0. 3, 2. You don't need anything. Leave it over there. 1. And 0. Thank you so much, Sophia and Emma and Caleb and Landon and Annan and my 3 little girls here, my 2 boys for getting here by the time I got to 0 and sitting quietly with their eyes on the teacher.
Aiden, stop playing. Nobody.
Somebody's computer is still playing music. Do not all get up and go, but if you know your computer is playing music, please go turn it off.
We cannot. Yeah, we have this one going.
Okay, then turn the computer nice, Anna. Thanks. All right, so we are going to do a fishbowl. So somebody please remind me what a fishbowl is. What is a fishbowl? Jack, what do we do when we have a fishbowl?
4 people get in a circle, and everybody crowds around them. And they're supposed to be watching them to see what they say, and they talk about it.
Yeah, they have a discussion about the book. And then after they have a discussion about the book, what do the people on the outside do? Do you remember? You remember, Jack? It's okay if you don't. So the people in the middle, you said, have a discussion about the book, and then the outside people are watching them, right? After they're finished with their discussion, what do the people on the outside do? They can add on is one thing. What else can they do? Landon? They comment about what they did, what?
Good.
What they did well, and then also what they need to work on. Good job. Okay, so we're going to read this book, and I'm so excited because it's one of my favorite books. I got introduced to it this summer. Do you have a question?
No, I have another thing. Every outside people do.
What?
During the first
Throw
book.
that away, please. What?
They be quiet.
Yeah, they need to be quiet while the other people are discussing. You're absolutely right.
We need our notebooks.
Nope, you don't need anything. Okay, so this is we got this, you know how I've talked to you guys before about the balanced literacy training that we did this summer?
Yeah.
Dylan, do you think that was a good decision? Nope, let's make the decision to go put him back.
But his head came off.
Thank you so much for putting him back. So this summer I've talked to you guys several times about how we had that balanced literacy training, right? Like how we did the found poems and all of that stuff that we've been doing in here. Okay, so this is another book they read to us this summer, and it's a really good book. Anna?
Is this one symbolism?
Some of it could be symbolic, but we're just having a book discussion today. So when you have the discussion, if you think of some things that are symbolic, that would be great to include. Give yourself a pat on the back for remembering that word. Okay, so it's called The Sunsets of Miss Olivia Wiggins by Lester L. Laminick. Have any of you ever read this book before? You've read this before? Okay, so I don't want you to make a prediction right now then, okay? If you haven't read the book though, by looking at the cover, what do you think this is going to be about?
Now, think about what you saw, think about the operational definitions, and complete your ratings. Hopefully you rated praise an 8, although, as with before, a reliable range includes a rating of 7 or 9. With communication, a reliable rating includes an 8 or 10, with the most ideal rating being a 9. Hopefully you rated enthusiasm and rapport as an 8 as well, although a 7 or 9 is also considered reliable. Again, as with the individual behavior construct ratings, if your ratings varied significantly from the reliable range, please reconsider the operational definition and what you observed to determine if you were too harsh or too kind in your evaluation of the behavior you observed. Thank you for participating in this training. If you are completing this training as part of a research project, you will receive an invitation to complete a reliability check. If you have additional questions, please visit www.dbr-cm.com or email Dr. Sims at wes.sims@wichita.edu.